Hey there! So you want to crochet a skate leash, like this one. This might be different from other skate leashes you've seen because I've added straps that tie at the ankles. I just think that this puts less pressure on the wheels and provides more support overall, like so. Now before I show you how to make one, I just want to show you how I use it, just so we have a very clear idea in our minds of what we're trying to accomplish and why the steps we'll be taking make sense. Here I am slipping it on, tightening it, and then tying these straps at the sides or the back, wherever you want. It just depends on how long you'll be making it. I'll be showing you measurements or tips for how to take your own measurements in a bit, but let me just show you the other side. It's the same thing. Let's just see that again so it's crystal clear. I take my hand in the boot so I don't get my hands dirty accidentally touching the wheels or something. There we go, tighten it. Now tie it. It's very easy to use and also very easy to make. This is actually the first thing I've ever crocheted in my life because roller skating is the only reason I tried to crochet. Now here we go. Nice and sturdy, easy to use. Oops. Okay, one tip is you should roll backwards. It's just easier and they're less likely to slip or fall when you roll backwards. Another tip for them to not do the splits is for you to tie them together. I'm going to show you that right here. So with one boot already having its ankle ties tied up, you just slip the other's ankle strap through and tie them together. And like I said, this is just so they don't do the splits when you're rolling, and an additional tip to that is to roll backwards. It's also better to carry them when they're tied together so that they don't fly around like nunchucks or something. Now I know I just said roll backwards, but I'm not doing that here. Whoops. It also works. Anyways, you're gonna need some measurements before you even get started. It needs to be long enough for you, so it depends on your height. So let's take a tape measure. Take a tape measure and holding it in your one hand at 0, just let it drop to the ground, and that measurement from your hand to the ground, you need to times that by 2. And then this next measurement, you also will times this by 2. It's the measurement around your boot that's under the trucks. So those two measurements that you doubled, you need to add them to each other. That's how long it should be. The last measurement, which is around the ankle, just eyeball how long you want it to be so you can easily tie at the ankles. And when we finally start, the first thing we need is our crochet hook. Mine happens to have a 5 on it because I didn't know what size to get. You use whatever size works for you. I'm not even familiar with the sizes. Anyways, so I'm using a bunch of colors. Use whatever colors you want. I'm doing a rainbow, but the steps I'll be taking work for any kind of stripy design or even just one color. Don't forget your scissors, by the way. You will also need a needle and thread later for sewing the ankle straps down. For now, let's just start crocheting. So you take your yarn and pinching the end there, you will have a little tail, and you just pinch that tail, leave it hanging down, and the rest of the yarn, which we call our working yarn in the crochet community, I believe, you take it behind it, take it around back, take it all around town. Just like that, and pinch your tail with your thumb and middle finger, and then you'll see you can pull your working yarn safely. As you do that, you'll be pulling it up to your index finger or pointer finger where you already had a loop of yarn. You take that loop that was there first. It was the first loop on your pointer finger when you first pinched the yarn in the first place. You take it and you just pull it down with your hook. You just slip your hook in, right, and now you're pulling it down. And then you let go. And now there's only one stitch left on your pointer finger. So you slip your hook into that loop or stitch, and now that is your first stitch. Your first stitch is this nice little adjustable stitch that crocheters call a slip stitch or a slip knot, I believe. And from there, we just begin to chain. And this is how you chain. You just take your hook, you take it under the yarn, the working yarn, and pull it through the loop you had there. Just keep pulling yarn through every loop. Every time you pull yarn, it turns into a new loop, which you will pull more yarn through. Now you see me wrapping yarn around my hand. I do that so we have some tightness when we're pulling, because it's hard to pull yarn when everything's just flopping about. It's a struggle. So just wrap it however is comfortable for you. I think the way I do it might be a little extra. Just wrap so much of it around my hand. You could just do it around your finger. I see people do that. I don't know. This works for me. So you see what works for you. Now I just continue chaining, which is really just pulling yarn from under the hook. Well, no, with the hook underneath. Yep, you just slip your hook under the yarn and keep pulling. I think you pretty much get the pictures, but I'll just show you one more. See, nice and slow, nice and easy. Just pull that yarn through the loop, and every loop you make is where you pull more yarn through. That's it. Don't worry, you can always go back to this, but let's speed this up a bit so this video is not too long. I think you get it anyways. And when you're done with all that chaining, you'll have this long little rope, which is what we call our first row. And now I'll be showing you how to do your second row. Now see, my hook is pointing through to the loop or stitch behind this very last stitch. The one right before it, just dive into it and then pull some yarn through. Now you have two loops that you pull some more yarn through. When we chain, we just pull through one loop. Now we have two loops for every stitch on this next row. Just pull some more yarn through those two loops you made. Dive in, pull some yarn through. Now you have two loops. Pull some more yarn through those two loops, and that's another stitch. Dive in the previous stitch, pull some yarn through, and pull more yarn through those two loops, and then you just keep going from there. And that's how you'll be doing every stitch in whatever color you're using from now on. Now you see, now that we're doing a second row, it starts getting a little twisty, it starts to curve. That's normal. Some people don't like it, but it will stop doing that as the leash gets thicker. It's just like twirling around like a worm because it's so thin right now. Now we're going to just finish this off just so it's extra clear in your mind how it's done, but I think you get it. Don't feel bad if you need to rewind. That's okay. I know that I had to go through a lot of tutorials before I got the hang of it. Mostly Pinterest. I have a Pinterest, by the way. I hope you'll check me out. Link in the description. Alright, so here's what 2 rows look like. My initial goal was really to make every color in this rainbow 2 rows, but I think I'm gonna need 3. I realize that now, and so this is I hope this is a helpful tip for you. If you're doing a stripey design and you want every stripe to look equal, your first stripe will actually have to be 1 row thicker than the rest, because the first row, which is just a chain, tends to look too thin and you can't see it. But I mean, it's okay if that's alright with you. Stripes don't all have to be equal. They can be thin and thick. You do you. Now here we have 3 rows, like I was saying. So my first stripe in the rainbow will be red, or is red right now, and that's why it's 3 rows thicker, because it tends to look thinner than the rest of them. But then here's orange, which I will just be doing in 2 rows. Same with every color after orange. Now to start a new row in a different color, we just slip some yarn through and make a little loop with our hook. Hold that tail at the end, you see, because it tends to slip off, so be careful. And now you have your first stitch. It's as easy as that, and now you can continue as if you never changed yarns. Just keep going like you were doing with the red. You dive in, get some yarn. Now you have 2 loops, and you will pull more yarn through those 2 loops. Dive in again. You've created 2 loops and you pulled some yarn through it. Dive in and you get it. Again, don't feel bad if you don't, just go back. Now here we have what is the almost finished product. Like I said, I did 3 rows for red and then 2 rows for every color after that. So this is 13 rows. That's just the thickness I need for the weight of my skates. But you might have heavier skates than I do, maybe because maybe yours are more heavy duty or something, metal, I don't know, fancy. But the important thing is that you make this skate leash thick enough to support your skates, especially their weight. Now this will depend, but I recommend 12 to 13 rows. I think that's just about right for some adult skates. Now for the ankle straps, they don't have to be so thick. I did about 3 rows. No, that's exactly 3 rows, I believe. Just because I think that's not too thin, not too thick. It's just enough for them to not snap off. So you definitely don't want to make them too thin, but you do you, whatever amount of rows you think is good enough for your ankle straps. So here is where we'll be attaching them. Just fold it, then flip it over, just so you see how it's going to look before you do it. And remember to be careful. Just attach the part of the straps that meet the leash to the corners of the leash, the end corners. So when you fold it over, you'll see the ends, and then that's exactly where your your ankle straps should meet them. I don't mind if they're not exactly even on both sides of the ankle straps, because it doesn't matter where you tie them, but then just sew them down when you're happy with the positioning. And you'll have something like this. Here we have my finished skate leash. It's perfectly functional, adjustable, has nice sturdy ankle straps. You just tighten and loosen as you please. It's sturdy enough for the weight of my skates. It's long enough for my height when I want to roll it behind me or beside me, or carry it, tie my skates together so they're not flying around. And just a reminder about the measurements I mentioned earlier, they do not have to be exact, okay? You can just approximate or eyeball, as long as they're not too short. So here's my skate leash again. It's actually too long for me, but like I said, it's better that it's too long than it's too short. So with that, we're good to go. Let's take this outside. And here it is. Here it is in action, my skate leash holding my skates together. I'm quite happy with it, so I hope that you'll be doing your own version soon. I hope that my instructions were clear enough and that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Happy crafting!